Joanne, I think it started with a phone call.
It did. After a council meeting I was at, and they sort of caught me unaware and asked me, well, Joanne, what can we do about this issue? And I just blurted out, well, if we had a poverty task force, we could turn the issue over to them. The foundation was already involved in some poverty work, so that was who I reached out to immediately, was Carolyn.
And it was actually perfect timing because, as Joanne said, we had launched our Tackling Poverty Together initiative in Hamilton, and in fact we needed to do more work on the together part.
Carolyn, had said to me early on, this can't be a task force, further to what she just said, it had to be a collaborative, and for me that began my whole journey in terms of how to do successful collaboration.
The genesis was twofold, the roundtable experience, but also the intense poverty work that had moved from small grants to neighborhood development, to community development, and then to community empowerment and planning capacity in neighborhoods eventually.
So in the early years of the Roundtable, in order to really understand the scope and the scale of poverty in the city of Hamilton, we did a number of things. So we first did a poverty matrix, which actually looked at the demographic data, really looking at the experience of people living in poverty and the length of that experience, and from different demographic perspectives. So what was the experience if you were an Indigenous person? What was the experience if you were a newcomer to Hamilton? That kind of thing. We also did a number of consultations with key groups in the community. So I probably had about 10 different rounds of consultations as we were developing the initial plan to really understand, what were groups doing in the community, how was poverty impacting their work, what were some of the things that they were seeing in the community, and then that really became the basis of the initial plan for the Poverty Reduction Roundtable. The Roundtable was pretty instrumental in the design of the first poverty reduction strategy for the province of Ontario. So I think, that the Roundtable has had that kind of influence that is pretty significant.
So we went on a journey, and that journey was to first and foremost start talking to other folks within the community. And the reason we started thinking about other people in the community is that no one group, in our belief, had all the answers. But possibly more important, at the very start of this whole thing, we didn't even know if we knew all the questions. We recognized very early on that the problem we're trying to solve is a systems problem. It's a complex, not complicated, there's complication to it, but a complex systems problem. And if it's a complex systems problem, you don't solve it alone. Nor do you have the opportunity or the ability to actually prescribe simply the solution. The first thing I typically remember hearing in these tables was, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And that was the first step of this wonderful, suddenly rich conversation of saying, well, if you didn't know that, if you knew that, could we do something differently? So the next really wonderful thing that we would hear in the group was, I think I can help you with that. And that was the start.
One of the first things that I've seen is that the Roundtable has really addressed and worked hard to relieve poverty, but it's giving a voice to those with a lived experience. To me, that is just worth 1,000 words, to hear people that are living that experience.
To create that social inclusion policy was extremely important because we wanted to hear from everyone. We didn't want to hear, we don't want to develop a tokenism as far as people in poverty were concerned. We wanted to bring everybody to the table to address them as equals and to hear everybody's voices. I think it changed a lot of negative attitudes into positive attitudes.
It's about values. It's about dispelling some of the myths about the people who live in poverty, because in fact these days a lot of them have a lot of skills for health or whatever. They've gotten into a bad situation and they have a lot to contribute, and I really think it was important for members of the table to understand what the true nature of the people who were living in poverty at the time, and I think that helped a lot of people to be motivated to work in more collaborative ways. It was all about values, respect, collaboration, and so on.
I think it's important that people understand that as much as I come from the editorial side, from the journalism side, but this commitment to working on poverty, to fighting poverty, if you like, for all these years has been more than just an editorial commitment. It was also a corporate commitment on the part of the people who run the place, our publisher, various publishers actually, right down to various departments. The Spectator has had active involvement in working with kids in poverty situations. We have our summer camp fund. Certainly a lot of attitudes that I've run across before and after has been changed. I can recall talking to somebody who owned a grocery store who wondered about why this was important to him, and when I explained to him that if perhaps people didn't have to use food banks, they might be able to buy from his store, he began to see it in a different way.
I got encouraged with all the training and support. I went to different forums and I created voice that poverty is not a choice.
The reason it's so important to pursue a living wage initiative in Hamilton is that it's about income security, and this is a city where 1 in 5 people are living below the poverty line, and the only way to change the reality of poverty is to put money in people's pockets. And so far that's not happening through government assistance, and certainly minimum wage as a government initiative isn't sufficient in order to lift people out of poverty. And so it's important therefore to call on corporate social responsibility, and that will allow people to be paid what they need to be paid in order to participate in community.
Currently we're working on Bill 6 and a campaign called Fix the Gap. Fix the Gap allows us to go around the province and talk to people about what it costs to live in their community. And with that information, create evidence-based social assistance rates that are nonpartisan. In other words, it's the people that recommend what people need to live on.
Once the public heard that story, and had a chance to learn the research that was put forward by the Poverty Roundtable, that's when we really started to get political traction to be the first municipality in the city to bring forward payday loan licensing.
In my mind, it's non-tax oriented dollars that can be put towards affordable housing in our community, and affordable housing is, I think, the foundation of helping people out of poverty. So my view is, and having had that lived experience, having coming out of poverty, and certainly understanding what housing means in terms of stabilizing lives, I think it's a key investment that we need to make. Were it not for the advocacy and I think the awareness that's been created over the last 10 years by the Poverty Roundtable, I don't think we'd be anywhere near being able to put this kind of initiative on the table at all.
It's important to focus on reduction in poverty in Hamilton, because if Roundtable and others don't do that, we can depend on government.
Most important reason why the people lived experience are on the Roundtable is because we have the opportunity to educate people who have no idea what it's like to live in poverty. We're the experts at this. Poverty is terrible and there's no need for it. This is a very rich country.
It's important to include the Indigenous voice, and it still continues to be important to include the Indigenous voice, just for the fact in regards to poverty itself. What I have learned is that, you know, we represent a very low population, being maybe 3% of the population, but yet in regards to the homeless and living in poverty, you know, we have very high numbers. Poverty is still here. What can we do? And regarding the housing and all that, there's a lot of work still needing to be done, because if we can't house our community, our people, what is it about? That's just a basic principle of life. We should at least have a house, a roof over our head. We should at least have food in our bellies. You know, those basic necessities, because this is Canada. You know, Canada is one of the best countries to live in, and we need to start showing it and proving it, you know, so.